Hey everyone, how you doing today? Yes, we brought back the man that you all love. We talk monthly about Vegas, and we got Brian Lebo. How you doing, man?
What's up, guys? I'm doing quite well. Glad to be with you, man.
Yeah, I tell you, about every 3 or 4 weeks, somebody on my channel goes, "When are you talking to Brian again? When are you talking to Brian again?" I'm like, okay, I'll talk to Brian again. So, what do you have to
Time
tell us
for
about
some Lebo
February?
love.
Yeah,
Oh man, I mean, it's exactly what I told you was going to happen. I mean, we're on fire. I mean, to some degree, when I've reached out to other realtors in other areas, I mean, this is a national situation, so it's not unique to other places. The difference is just how profound it is here in Las Vegas. So, I've spoken to realtors in Seattle and in Oregon and other places in the country, and everyone's selling like crazy. But we seem to be as terrible as it can possibly be as far as the heightened level of competition and the lack of inventory. Our inventory levels have just literally diminished to the lowest that I've ever seen in my career of almost 20 years.
Mhm.
So we're, like as we were discussing earlier, we're kind of on the precipice of what is to come. So the media is slowly starting to pick up on a few stories regarding the fact that inventory is getting lower and it's a little tough out there. But the media is always reporting what happened, not necessarily what is currently happening. And what's currently happening is much more profound than what they're actually reporting. So, did you want me to get right
yeah,
into
go
like the
for it. Just
anecdotal ones?
go for it.
Okay, so this month's video I just put out yesterday. So I kind of started the video with a few of these anecdotal stories, but to kind of illustrate to you guys the level of competition that we're dealing with. So on a lower end, okay, I had an investor. It was a $424,000 house. It was a great house. Don't get me wrong, great house, but $425,000, and they ended up in one day with 15 offers, and it ended up going for $475,000. I mean, that's
What do
come
you know
on.
by chance? If you were just a ballpark, what do you think that place would rent for?
Probably about 2,200 a month.
Okay, wow.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was okay, but it was a nicer property. It was more the type of a property that an owner occupant would fight for,
Okay.
less so an investor. Because obviously, as investors, we're looking for bang for the buck, and especially with my investors, I've got contractors for everything. So cash is cash is cash. So if you have the capital, it's almost always, especially in this market, it's almost always better to buy something average or below average, put the minimal into the property for aesthetic purposes on a remodel, and then you can get to the biggest return on investment as opposed to buying the house that someone put $30,000 into and now they're getting $50,000 appreciation because owner occupants will pay whatever to get a property that they don't have to spend their capital improving. So a little bit different, but suffice to say that one went for $50,000 over. I had another property, last one sold for 510. It was listed for 540. So right there was a pretty large premium, and it wasn't even as nice as the one that sold for 510. They had multiple offers. I was able to leverage my relationships, and we ended up getting it. But we ended up having to come in at 555 from a 539 price when 539 was already overpriced. And we were grateful to be able to have the opportunity to get it. Now, going up the tiers, it's equally as insane. I had one for $1.3 million, and it was a nice property, but in any other time, it wouldn't have been that aggressive. 1.3 million, and they had multiple offers. We came in at $75,000 over list price, and we lost to 1.4 cash. They went 100 grand over and took the bag. I had one 2.7 million, which in Las Vegas, 2.7 million. I mean, that's the top 1% of all properties. I mean, that's very expensive for Las Vegas. Typically and historically, you have very few buyers in that price segment. And 2.7 million, my client said, "Hey, I'm flying out to Austin. I'll be back next week. I want to check it out, probably write an offer." Sounds good. He left 2 days later, off the market, 2.7 gone, vaporized.
Hmm.
So I can give anecdotal story after anecdotal story, but the moral of the story is, yeah, we're on fire. And I don't know if you want to get into metrics now or wait,
Well, I guess the
but
one question I have before we get to the metrics, right, is first off, the market you're describing is what I hear 90% of the markets across the US. Vegas is unusual because I think everybody kind of expected a little bit more stress in the system, right? Given, what's going on in the world the last year. But I mean, do you have any idea if there's really any stress with forbearance or canceling rent? I mean, is there troubled, properties out there that might be coming sometime this year?
The answer is yes. Yes, there are troubled properties, and we're vastly living in a world of haves and have-nots, right?
Yeah.
The wealthier continue to get wealthier, the middle class erodes, and the poor, tend to get poorer.
Mm.
So that analogy transcends and goes right into real estate. And so ultimately, it definitely appears as though everyone is rich. When I look around, it looks like everyone is rich, from cars, used cars. I'm just astounded at the fact that there's no new cars to buy because everything is sold through. Used cars are selling for top. It seems like everyone is rich. That's pretty bizarre, especially in Las Vegas, where we were hit harder than any other place in the country. But in my world, it really doesn't seem to appear that many people are hurting. The truth is, yes, people are definitely hurting. I have shown homes. There was one home that I showed where it was a performer from Cirque du Soleil. I mean, this woman hasn't worked in an entire year. And their skill set is very, very unique. So a lot of these performers, they've been laid off for an entire year and there's no callback date yet. So there is an element to the service industry that has been brutalized for sure. And yes, there is a high number of mortgage forbearances on the books. The issue with the mortgage forbearances, however, is, let's just say half of those are going to be worked out. They're going to slap the principal add the negative equity to the principal and slap it on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally know a few people who have already been through that road. And it worked very successful for them. But there's going to be people who are going to have to sell their home. The problem is, I don't care how many you throw. I mean, you could literally throw 1,000 properties on the market. It will absorb that in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
We're so diminished. You got to remember, they say a neutral market is a 6-month supply of inventory. So to us, that's 15 to 18,000 homes, depending on what time of the year we're discussing. And right now we are below 2,000. We're somewhere around 1,800 homes. So when you figure we're selling about 3,000 homes a month and we only have 1,800, and every single week, this was the best week I've seen in 6 months. We only lost 48 homes. That was the best week I've seen. We're losing about 150 every single week. So you're getting to the point where, like, how low can you possibly go?
Well, yeah, now you need inventory, right? Prices need to go up to a point where people that own second or investment homes start selling. Something has to give.
And the problem you have there is our rental market is so strong. And especially for single family, again, I can't discuss different areas of the country because real estate is regional. And in Las Vegas, we haven't built affordable homes that, typically investors look at as rental properties. We haven't been building that product for 15 plus years. So we have a massive pent up demand, just like the entire country does, for affordable housing. The difference is in Las Vegas is they've been building luxury apartments. So, the so-called millennials, they're more interested in immediate gratification. So they want a really hip, cool place where there's cabanas by the pool and a gym, as opposed to purchasing a home that's less desirable, building some sweat equity. That hasn't really been the direction that we've been going. Mm-hmm. So the problem is, once we got into this pandemic and people are forced to live at home, who cares about the cabana? No one's hanging out by the pool, it's closed. And when you're living in a smaller confined space, that's when you go, it would be nice to have a garage. It'd be nice to have a backyard to kick it. It would be nice to have more square footage. So the problem is that we haven't been building what's in its highest demand. We've only been building these apartments. So even if you're not looking to purchase, you're looking to rent an actual home now, as opposed to these luxury apartments, which actually were more expensive than a lot of these rental properties. So we have a very high demand for rentals. As a result, rental pricing has increased. So you have to look at it this way. It's the opportunity cost of money, right? If I'm an investor And I was used to getting $2,000 a month in rent, and now all of a sudden I'm getting $2,400 a month. And if someone leaves, it's rented out in a week. You have to look at that and go, okay, well, sure, I can sell it for top dollar, but unless you think a crash is coming tomorrow, when you work the numbers, I mean, the math doesn't lie. So I sell the property. If you 1031 exchange it, you're not going to find that deal in the next few months. We're trending up.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do? Sell it and pay capital gains tax? And then what?
Yeah.
It doesn't really, the opportunity cost of selling the asset doesn't make any sense, especially when the rent is so generous and the vacancy levels are so diminished.
Yeah. This is something that I'm really pushing is the single family home is where you want to be, right? The class A urban kind of core is out, right? They want space. They want a backyard. They want a garage for their stuff. They just want more space, and affordable rental homes are going to be the best asset for the next 4 or 5 years. Easy.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. And like I said, in Las Vegas, the virtue is that there's no competition coming.
Yeah.
Because it's not affordable to build these types of properties anymore.
You're
so
right.
If you have this product, it's in high demand, and you can't compete on the supply end because they're not going to build those properties anymore. It's not cost efficient to build a 1,300 square foot single story home with a 2-car garage. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Never going to be built again, at least in these areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really don't see that. And like we discussed before, if you look at the refinances last year, I was reading a great article. Obviously, there was a slew of refinances in 2020. Even with the pandemic, I think it was up 47% from 2019. So on one hand, you have a lot of individuals. I mean, in my neighborhood alone, there's 4 dumpsters for people remodeling their house. So a lot of these people are pulling the equity and remodeling, whereas in year past, these exact same people would be listing their home for sale and then purchasing a new home around the corner. So Vegas has some very different challenges that other cities don't necessarily have, where the delta between new homes and resale is very large right now. So how do you create inventory? You have to motivate sellers to actually sell. And I'm not seeing that, because unless you're moving out of state, great, I can get top dollar for my house. Then what?
Yeah.
Then what? And that's the major problem for a lot of people, is they go look at new homes and realize it's going to cost them 30% more for the same, or 50% more to finally step up. And most people just elect to just go ahead and remodel. So we have very unique challenges to this market. And that's my largest concern, is watching the inventory, because we can't really achieve equilibrium without inventory rising, because our demand hasn't even hit peak yet. We're not even into spring, let alone summer. And Vegas, just like every city, that's our prime season when people move, especially with families and kids. So it's going to be an absolute bloodbath in the next couple of months throughout the summer. Because
now, when you say bloodbath, just so people realize that you're not calling for a crash. You're talking about competition to buy.
No. So that kind of leads me into a really good question. And again, I discussed some of this in the video, but anytime you have a market that's on fire, you always have contrarians, which you need contrarians. I tend to be a contrarian, but you have to think it through. Everyone, if there's a boom, the bust is coming. The bust is coming. And I mean, you can go back 10 years on my videos and you can see people going, there's gonna be a crash next year, in 2 years. I guarantee. If you listen to people 10 years ago, you would have never bought a house, and you'd be done. So the reality is this, our market is going to continue to accelerate. We have a very difficult way of creating inventory at this junction. Our economy is set to honestly explode. I genuinely believe we are going to explode when we get to July.
I agree.
I
think it might be even earlier. It could be late May.
So the word on the street is that we should be open for business for Memorial Day. That's the word behind the scenes, is that we're priming for Memorial Day to blow it up.
Awesome.
Now, I was actually, because I'm just dying to go on a vacation, just do something that doesn't.
You and me both.
Have a mask. I got my vaccines. I'm done. I'm ready to lick some doorknobs. I just want to go someplace.
Let's go.
But yeah. So I was looking into Miami, right? Because where can you go in the country where it's open? I'm not scared. I'm ready to party. Let's do something.
Yeah.
I looked at Miami. Flights from Vegas are so dirt cheap. It was like $110 for round trip. Then you look at the hotel rooms. Good Lord. The rooms are 3-4 times the normal price. I mean, the cheapest room I could find at the W was $1,040 plus taxes for one night. Yeah. And that was throughout April. So the moral of the story is I'm not alone. Everyone wants to go to some place where it's open to have some sense of normalcy. Yeah. And Miami is a great place to party and let loose, right? Well, what's the greatest place in the world to party? It's Vegas. And not many people from the West Coast are willing to travel all the way to Miami. Yeah. And again, a lot of people don't want to get on planes. So I'm sure they're catering a lot to regional activity. And Vegas, I mean, we got California, we've got the whole West Coast right there in driving distance.
Man. This is going to be the year in Vegas. Yeah.
So as much as, we have hurt and some demographics have been hurt more than others, I feel very bullish that, like I said, when we started, I said, look, 2021, whatever. I'm in it for 2021.5.
There you go.
And 0.5 is coming in July.
I remember.
And I think we're going to be huge. So the crux of it is, I think our economy is going to do better. Friends of mine that worked in service industry, they're slowly getting jobs back. Some of them are having to pick up 2 separate jobs to replicate what they had in one. But bartenders are coming back. Service industry slowly coming back. But I think we're going to be open for Memorial Day, and I think it's just going to be a record-breaking second half of the year for people just dying to do anything. It's going to be huge. So when we kind of come back to the housing portion, a lot of these people impacted financially because of lack of work, we're right there. I think we're right there.
Yeah, I think that's really what we're going to see, kind of tying a couple of topics together. I think there's clearly lots of people in pain, but I do think we're right there. They're going to go back to work, and then most of their lenders are going to go, glad that's over. Let's take the 15K or whatever it is. We'll make a second 0% interest, and we'll pretend like that 14 months never happened.
Right. And you got to remember as well, I mean, look, if you currently own a property and you've owned a property and you took that mortgage forbearance, obviously you've had skin in the game for a minimum of a year, right?
Yeah.
Obviously at this junction, you've appreciated so much, and there's so much more appreciation from a lending standpoint. It's not very risky to take this on because there's going to be a tremendous amount of equity. Now, here's the one thing that I kind of want, unless you want to jump into the segment.
Go for it.
So here's, when we were talking about the contrarians, right? Everyone loves to say, oh, there's going to be a correction. There's going to be a correction. The truth is, who am I to predict that this far out? You would have thought there would have been a correction a long time ago. You would have thought Wall Street would have corrected. Yes, eventually everything corrects, but the metrics are there that we can sustain appreciation. What I'm interested in is this. This is really where I think we need to keep an eye on the housing market from a national level. And this is what I kind of ended the video with. Obviously, economics 101, right? Supply and demand. We have no supply and we have elevated demand. As prices continue to rise, eventually that demand is going to diminish because we're going to just price people out. So eventually the market will correct itself and equilibrium will appear, either through the advent of inventory, which I don't think is really what's going to move it, or people just falling out of the market demand-wise because it's just getting too hot. The concern that I have, having lived through this cycle twice before, I'm not really worried so much about a massive crash or a huge correction unless, and I think this is what we all need to keep an eye out for, and this is what's likely to occur at the end of this year or certainly next year, next spring. Like we discussed, you always reach a pricing threshold where people physically can't or won't. My concern is how we end up with a housing crash and a massive correction is if and when, and I always bet on greed, if and when we start seeing financial vehicles to make housing more attainable and more affordable. So I'm not worried about this at all. What I am worried about is, when do we start seeing the influx of stated income loans, which will be abused? when do we start seeing the majority of these home buyers purchasing with interest only loans? Because again, while there was a multitude of reasons that we had the recession and the bubble in housing in 2008, part of that was buyers' ability to extend themselves further than they should have been able to because they took an interest only loan. We live in America. People don't look at the price, they look at the monthly payment. And if you can shoehorn someone's ass into a monthly payment, more than not, people will lynch themselves into it. So, I mean, look at it. Everyone has $1,000 iPhones. Not everyone's writing a check for $1,000. They go $50 a month, I'll run it. They would never write a check for $1,000, but they'll pay $50 a month. Mm-hmm. If you can't afford the car, let's do a 5-year lease. There's 7 and 8 year financing terms for vehicles. And why is that? It's a terrible financial decision, but it's because you can afford X monthly. And if I extend the period, if I figure out how to manipulate that monthly payment into a longer term, I can get you what you really, really want. Yeah. And so that my concern is more on the financial aspect of if people start taking advantage and if the market allows people to manipulate lending. That's to me the concern. So.
Yeah, again, I've lived through this. I've been in the game 20 years. It's, for me, crashes only happen for one of 3 reasons. One is you see a just huge wave of new supply at one time. That doesn't happen in a normal market, right? Mom will decide to sell differently than Susie, than Mark, than Bill. It's right. Banks, they list everything on Monday, right? It's a different animal. So that's not going to happen. In Vegas, you'd have to have inventory go up 800 or 900% just to get back to even, right? I mean, you're so far below. The other one is we could see an interest rate spike because, again, affordability, right? Demand being priced out. It's either with price or interest rates, right? If interest rates shoot up from like 3% on the 30-year fix to 6%, that'll put a dent in the supply. And then the other one is the consumer confidence, right? Does the consumer get scared? And they're not going to get, they want space. What did we learn the last year? Space is good. And oh, by the way, we're about to open up, swimming in vaccines. So I don't see any chance of a crash, not even in Vegas. I don't see a crash in 2021. It doesn't add up.
One other factor that could contribute in a different fashion, I was going through my comments in the videos and this guy it led me to think about things in a different way. When you look at the housing crash, the recession housing crash, when you look at it in hindsight, it doesn't take a genius to have seen that coming. It's insane that no one saw it coming because in hindsight, it's so simple. My general rule of thumb is when everyone's doing something, get the hell out. That's just a common sense, basic, fundamental rule that I live by. The issue, one of the concerns that I have that could spill into real estate is this. When we had the recession, especially being here in Vegas, every valet driver owned 4 homes. Every cocktail waitress and stripper owned 2, 3, 4 homes and lived in a $700,000 house that on an interest-only loan they couldn't afford. Mm-hmm. The problem with that housing bubble was everyone thought that they were a real estate mogul and investor, right? Everyone was vested in this game. And the truth of the matter was most of them were not investors. They were speculators. And there's a tremendous difference between an investor and a speculator. Now, if you look at what's going on out here right now, look at Wall Street and look at the whole Robin Hood, which really started, I remember my father in the 90s and he was doing a little bit of stock trading. And back then, it was $100 per trade. So you had to be kind of a little bit wealthy to throw enough money to justify the margin of the cost trades, $200 to buy and sell. Mm-hmm. So you had to buy in large volumes and you had to sit in those stocks for a while. And price per earnings, all those things mattered because it was fundamentals. And then when E-Trade and Scottrade came down to $7, well, all of a sudden, man, you got day traders and everyone's a genius and it opened up these barriers. Then you look at Apple stock and Tesla and the manipulation involved in these stocks. And now we're at the point where, your kid can have a Robinhood account and he's jumping in. The problem that I see is everyone is a stockbroker, everyone is an investor, and it's completely manipulated, but everyone's making money and wants to make money like their friends. And that transcends into other areas. I mean, Pokemon cards, what the hell are we talking about?
Exactly.
And now, I forget the basketball one.
Yeah.
Now Top Shot. So now you mean to tell me that we're trading YouTube videos?
Yeah.
I mean,
I could
just
own a
from-
6-second clip of LeBron's jump shot.
Yeah, for like $2 million.
Yeah.
Like you just have to take a step back and think about that fundamentally and go, this is the damn dumbest idea I've ever heard. And people are making millions until the day that they don't. And then everyone now is a currency trader because of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So my common sense feeling is that when you lower those barriers to entry and anyone can do it, you no longer have real investors who actually understand business. You have speculators. So for me, if there's a bubble, the true bubble is in the financial instrument between Wall Street, trading cards, that industry.
Yeah.
That is where I think we're going to have a huge bubble and a huge burst. And when that bubble bursts, you're going to see people's wealth evaporate. And by far and large, wealthy people are diversified. They own real estate. It's going to be the middle class that just gets completely destroyed. And I think if you lose so much of, one, your net worth, and two, operating income, because a lot of people I know are trading Bitcoin and they're trading Pokemon cards and they're living off of the money that they're making as supplemental income. And I think that when that bubble bursts, and that, again, looking back at housing, it was guaranteed to fail. Looking at this, it's guaranteed to fail. Question is, who and how many people make so much money on the come up? And it's a game of hot potato for who's holding it on the end. I think that could be a major factor down the line affecting housing, is when that bubble bursts. I think that's going to affect people's, obviously affect their income, but it's also going to affect their bank accounts. I think that could really have an effect.
Yeah. Well, you're pointing at something that's very true. When people feel wealthy, and sometimes it's not even real cash, it's just like a number on a trading account. They're more confident, they spend, they're happy, right? And you take an L, you take 2 L's, you kind of retreat.
You tighten up.
Yeah.
Right.
Whoa, not doing that again.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, the other thing is so true is there's a lot more leverage in the system, right? They're putting up $10 for every 100. And as somebody who day traded a bunch in the .com crash, I know what a margin call feels like. They're not fun.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting. So you want to close out with just stats from February? What'd you see?
Yeah. So, all right, let's start off with the sales. So from a sales perspective, we ended up selling 2,500 homes last month, which is pretty much on par. I mean, earlier I said 3,000, and we do sell about 3,000, but that's more typically getting into like spring, summertime. But either way, it was a 12% increase over February of last year. And again, that's pre-pandemic. So that's a pretty realistic
That's a jump. Yeah.
That's a huge jump. And you have to remember, I can't tell you how many clients I have that want homes and can't get a home. So the fact that we were able to sell 2,500 homes, there's more people sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to pop up, trying to get a property. That number would have easily been 3,500 if people actually could have got their offers accepted and found decent homes. So that's impressive. Sales price, which is what everyone really cares about. Sales price actually jumped up. You're going to see online that Vegas is showing 355,000. I've long argued these metrics. Those metrics, they're supposed to be for resale homes, not new homes. But the data that comes from the association to the press combines the two. So it's really a flawed metric. It's anything that was listed on the MLS, and a lot of the new homes are listed on the MLS, especially in recent years. So the median price for a new home is always higher than a resale home. So that skews the numbers tremendously. So the realistic number is 350,250. So that's up 11.2% from February of last year, and about a 2% jump from January. That's the number to pay attention, is 1.8 over January. What's even more pervasive than the 1.8 over January is this. February, those are homes that went into escrow in January and December. And I can tell you, December and pretty much the majority of January, the market was, it was kind of competitive, but not really. I mean, you could get what you wanted. There might be another offer on the table, but it was nothing. I mean, if you came in 5,000 over list price, it was yours if you had to. But pretty much a list price offer would have got the job done in January. And if we went up 2% last month for transactions that occurred in December and January, where do you think we're going to be next month and the month after? Because like I said, right now, every client I've had, I said, look, in your search, if you see that price, you have to either pay that price, but most likely you're going to have to jump over that price, maybe 5%. So everything is listed way higher than the last guy sold, and then they're getting higher than the list price. So I am dying to see, maybe not so much March's numbers that are closing, but for sure in April. So when we get to May and reflect on April, that price appreciation is going to be massive. I mean, we're at 350. I mean, be at 380 in a couple months. It's going to be pretty drastic, pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
good time to own good time to own some real estate.
I people say that to me, and my answer from investments is, I mean, yeah, in theory it sounds good, but unless you're selling, you got to look at it and just go, all that matters is that you're cash flowing and everything is paying for itself, because
good for you.
Whether my properties go up or go down, it only makes a difference when you sell.
You're right.
And I'm not selling. So as long as asses are in seats, that's what I care about. If
paying
vacancies,
paying assets in seats.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Luckily, we don't have the problems that you guys are having. But yes. So that's one. As we discussed earlier, inventory is just crushed. So we ended the month with 2,009 properties.
Oh my God.
Last year I was complaining. Man, we have no inventory. This is terrible. And we ended February of last year with 4,382 properties. So we were less than 50%. And right now, as of 2 days ago, we're at 1,847. So we dropped 114 2 weeks ago and then 48 this week.
You're like at 20 days of inventory or something like that?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah. Like roughly 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
That I've never heard. Oh my God. That's just nuts.
Like I said, I've been doing this for about 20 years. And going back to the days that I thought were terrible, it wasn't this bad. It just wasn't as bad.
Yeah, there is no crash.
And like I said, I not for a long time. I mean,
yeah,
like I've told people, we are definitely going to accelerate. The question might be this time next summer.
Maybe, yeah, right.
I might be telling people, hey, you know what? Cool it. But we have a year-long run ahead of us easily. Yeah. And so then when you go into Crazy Town, the newest metric that I developed was like saturation by price range to get an idea as far as how different price ranges are actually performing. So under 250,000, 69% of homes are already off the market. So, and you go back to, June, July, it was 47.50. A big difference, but that price segment's always tight. The biggest segment, which is 2/3 of our market, is 250 to 500. And that right now is at 75%.
Oh,
that's up from 39%. So, I mean, in just simple terms, think about it. The average buyer who goes on Zillow, 3 out of the 4 homes you're looking at, they're toast. There's no point even looking at. 3 out of 4 homes don't even exist. Wow. And then the majority of the homes that you are looking at, there's already 10 offers on the table. If it's been on the market for 1 or 2 days, there's already offers on the table. So
that's amazing.
When you go to 500 to 750, even that's at 65%. You go to 750 to $1 million, 56%. $1 million to 1.5, $1 million to 1.5. That's sitting at 48%. Going back last year, it was at 15%. Again, that's our luxury market. Wow. So you have to realize, and then over 1.5 million at 37% from 11. Again, like luxury homes, it's normal for a luxury home to take 6 months or a year. And sometimes if it's in a higher price range, it could take 2 years. And now you mean to tell me that, what was it? Half the homes, a $1.5 million home, half the homes you're looking at, they're already
Gone.
under contract. They're already gone.
Jesus.
So to a degree, no matter who you are or what price range you're in, it's bleak. And when you add them all together, it's 69% of our entire market is currently under contract. 69%. So again, the average consumer going on Zillow, 7 out of 10 homes are already toast. No point even playing.
Wow. I would not have guessed this would have been our conversation last year when we started doing this. Go figure.
But again, what we didn't count on was that interest rates would plummet and homeowners would pull out equity.
Yeah.
And the stimulus would really, really help a lot of people. I mean, the majority of people I know that got stimulus money, a lot of them didn't really need it, and they just bought stuff for the house or did this and that. So we've been able to prop the economy up for from a lot of people just with these stimulus checks.
Yeah, and then the banks, what's very different, again, having gone through the last crisis, the banks are working with people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's vastly different. So yeah, I think Vegas is boom times ahead. The next 12 months, easy double-digit appreciation. I mean, it's just. I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be a crash later, but it ain't coming in 2021. All these people are talking about.
Yeah. And again, it's easier for the banks to work with people this time around because people have tremendous levels of equity. Mm-hmm. I mean, the banks aren't nice people. They're not doing this just to be, good Samaritans. It's just a financial decision that it makes more sense to move the negative equity to the end of the term, keep collecting interest, and keep them paying. Yeah. Whereas when we lost 50% of our home value, it's a different story.
Yeah, banks sort of created their own negative feedback loop last time. They closed on these, which caused this, and this time they're like, dude, they're going to work with 8 or 9 out of 10 people. There'll be some people that have no job prospects, did bad things. They'll just take those homes, but it's going to be like that much, and it won't be enough to move the needle.
And again, for the people who just do not have options, who are still unemployed and their forbearance is up, they're going to sell and they're going to make a ton of money off of the house sale, and it's going to sell in 2 seconds. Yeah. So again, it's a very unique situation that you cannot compare to the last 2 booms that we've had in Las Vegas. The only thing they have in common is that there's home value appreciation. Beyond that, the similarities end tremendously.
Totally agree. Hey, Brian, how can people get a hold of you? What's the channel name? If they want to buy something in Vegas, what number do you want them to call?
Yeah. So every month I do monthly update videos where, very similar to this, I go over all the analytics. I give you my sense of direction and where we're at and try to make sense out of the madness as I coin it. So by all means, please subscribe the Lebo group on YouTube. My website is actually, we're remixing it right now, so it's a little under construction, but if you go to lebogroup.com, you can contact me through there. Best way is very simple. Just contact me directly, call me or text me, and it's 702-257-LEBO, 702-257-LEBO, L-E-B-O. It's the best way to reach me. Other than that, let me know.
There you go. Thanks, Brian. This is always a lot of fun. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep.